Well, it is Thursday. Good morning. Welcome to Good Morning Uganda. Now today, the reason why I'm smiling is that right before we came on air, someone took me back into time, reminding me of some of the shows that we used to enjoy, especially as young children. Now, on UBC, then UTV, that was our TV, that would come on at 6 p.m., I think, up to midnight. And then we would have to wait up until the next day. And we have been reminiscing on some of the shows we watched back in the day. I think Pingu was a blockbuster in many a home. I mean, who didn't enjoy Pingu? But then there was also Generations, there was Dangerous Women, there was Dr. Derrick. I remember my big sisters enjoying this one, and many more. What are some of the shows that you enjoyed back in the day? Today is Throwback Thursday. You can see it from the music that we have been playing for you. There was Missing You by Casey, and Julie here just told me that good morning, Julie.
Yeah, good morning, Olive. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Good morning. Thank you so much for choosing to watch UBC TV. And yeah, I just told Olive that Missing You by Casey, it feels like I watched it as a throwback then. Now that it's playing as a throwback, but it feels like growing up I watched it as a throwback in itself. Not so sure if it was really a throwback at the time I got to experience it.
Well, it depends on when you were growing up, because that song is a 2001 song. Okay. And yeah, around that time I was starting to learn music, to fall in love with music. They say that the music you enjoy at the ages of 12, 13, 14, 15, basically your teens, is the music that shapes the kind of music that you appreciate later on.
Interesting.
Because now looking back, that is still my music. Yes.
Interesting. But you did talk about Inspector Derrick there that used to show on UTV, and it reminds me of my mother. She really, really loved it so much. But you also talked about cartoons. Wow, I loved cartoons. They really raised me. I remember watching Tom and Jerry on Cartoon Network. I remember watching Didi and Dexter. I remember watching Ghostbusters. I remember watching SpongeBob came a little later.
So you're the SpongeBob kids.
It came a little later, but I remember watching the Simpsons. Till date, I still follow up with the Simpsons. I remember the Flintstones. I remember Gem, Powerpuff Girls. Wow, there was a lot to watch. And then Power Rangers, Land of the Lost. Goodness, that was a child I had.
Now, actually, for me, now when I look back, I grew up in a household where I was, for the most part, the young child. So because I had big sisters in the house, for the most part, I would watch what they were watching.
I can imagine they were watching Telemundo soaps or something.
They were watching Telemundos. I remember, I think I was around P7 when people were watching Sunset Beach. I never got the chance to watch it because I would be in school and all that. But yeah, I remember it was quite a bang. But then there was Generations, and Generations was really Generations, because this generation would watch, and another generation would watch, and another. And the lady, we reached a point where we didn't even refer to the characters by their actual names. We knew them
by their character names.
Names. I remember Mandla. I remember Karabo.
Oh, that's Generations.
That's Generations.
That's Generations. But if you speak into that line of movies, then what really comes home was Woman of My Life.
Oh my goodness, I enjoyed
Woman of My Life.
Antonio.
And then the more recent one was
Secreto. There was Secreto Diamo. There was Second Chance.
Yes, Second Chance. Thank you. Second Chance. Yes.
Okay. Well,
what a way to throw back and to start the day, throwing back and giving you memories of your own in the years that you have come.
Exactly. But now let's come back to the present. Parliament has dismissed allegations that there was a 100 million cash bonanza to members of Parliament. Now, according to the Deputy Speaker of Parliament, he dismissed these allegations as a street talk, saying that he didn't receive any money. And And the NRM Chief Whip, Chris Obua, asked those that are alleging that members of parliament were given money to provide proof. Now, the allegations indicate that members of parliament were given 100 million shillings each after they supported the coffee bill, and apparently they will also be supporting the upcoming UPDF Act. So, who is telling the truth and who is lying? I think this is a question I'm going to be asking a lot this year, given that we are going into the election year and given that politicians lie.
Yes, that is why they say politics is a dirty game.
It is a dirty game.
And sometimes I wonder if anyone joins it out of the good spirit of serving the nation, if they end up ultimately serving the nation. Because for the few examples we've seen, you always see controversies here and there.
Yeah, controversies. And it's really hard for us, the electorate, to tell who is actually right or not, because even if, let's say, you're a supporter of the opposition, right now the way things look, you're not very confident in them.
Yes.
But also, even if you're supporting the NRM, there are people who are still not confident, even if that's their party. But anyway, also Arias Nalukola, the new member of parliament, the newest member of parliament, and also the Kawempe North member of parliament, did address the House for the first time, and he called for action on the human rights violations that are allegedly occurring in the country.
Yes, indeed. He
But
in fact shared that he would want to amend the law where the UPDF does not make an appearance during elections and at polling stations, just because of what he went through and experienced during the Kawempe by-election. But also on a sad note, rather, Mubende is experiencing a lot of teenage pregnancies due to lack of schools in that district.
Lack of schools in the district.
Lack of schools. And in fact, Kalungu Health Center 3 gets to at least deal with 16 to 25 teenage pregnancies monthly.
And the reason given?
The reason given is that there are no schools nearby, near these schools and near these children, near most homes. And in fact, there is one school. There should be one school. By the law, by government mandate, there should be one school per sub-county. But as of 5 sub-counties in Mubende, there is no government-aided school.
Well, which school are we talking about here? Are they primary schools? Are they secondary schools?
Secondary schools, to be particular, because some of the girls finish P7 and drop out because the schools nearest to them are actually not nearest to them. So
they're far.
They are really far. So cases like distance, it's where some of the teenage pregnancy cases arise from. As she moves from one destination to another, from home to school, obviously a lot happens there.
On the way.
But also the district education officer in Mubende said that lack of schools is not primarily the reason teenage pregnancies are on the rise in Mubende, citing that even parents have a role to play. Why don't you escort your child to school?
Well, parents have a role to play. I can't disagree with that, but I also think that he is shifting the blame. If there has to be sub-counties, rather a school per sub-county,
yes.
And here we are with 5 sub-counties without a secondary school, then I think
secondary school.
Exactly.
Yes.
Then, in my opinion, the education office in the district is not helping the people in the district, is not lobbying enough, because when you say parents are being negligent, if I have to work and then I send a child to school, I am not expected, let's say you're staying maybe in Chira and your child has to go to a school in Rubaga, obviously something has to give. You will either go to the garden and dig or go to your business and work, or you will have to take your child to school. And we are talking about parents that probably don't even have cars. I remember he said they should aid them by buying them bicycles. Some of these homesteads cannot afford 2 meals a day, and you're asking them to buy bicycles. So for me, it sounds like Marie Antoinette with the cake. If you can't afford bread, yeah,
then eat the cake.
Really sad. But let's have a look at local news.
And in our local stories, we start with President Museveni held bilateral talks with the President of Zimbabwe, His Excellency Emerson Mnangagwa, at State House Entebbe. His Excellency Mnangagwa is in Uganda to attend the 11th session of the Africa Regional Forum on Sustainable Development. Now, during the meeting, President Museveni welcomed His Excellency Mnangagwa to Uganda. He also assured his guests that Uganda will work with Zimbabwe to ensure peace in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Additionally, President Museveni thanked His Excellency Mnangagwa for accepting Uganda Airlines to make direct flights to Harare, Zimbabwe. On his part, President Mnangagwa thanked President Museveni for hosting the 11th session of the Africa Regional Forum on Sustainable Development. He acknowledged the cordial relations which do exist between Zimbabwe and Uganda. He also emphasized the need to intensify the economic ties between the two countries. He also commended President Museveni for standing with Zimbabwe against the sanctions imposed on his country by the Western powers. And President Mnangagwa also requested Uganda's support in Zimbabwe's bid for a non-permanent seat on the Security Council 2027-2028. And in response, President Museveni assured him that Uganda will support Zimbabwe for the Security Council. Now, still staying with President Museveni, he urged African leaders to take bold steps towards self-sustainability, moving away from the reliance on donor funds that often come with strings attached. The president highlighted Uganda's recent economic growth, which occurred despite financial sanctions from America and the World Bank following the country's passing of the anti-homosexuality law. According to President Museveni, Uganda achieved a 6% economic growth, proving that Africa can thrive without foreign aid. And this was during the opening of the 11th session of the Africa Regional Forum on Sustainable Development, currently taking place at Peak Resort Munyonyo. Now, looking at matters medical, the Speaker of Parliament, Right Honourable Anita Among-Annette, has affirmed House commitment towards enacting the National Medical Insurance Law. The move comes at a time 25% of international travelers from Uganda are reported to be seeking specialized medical attention from abroad annually. This came to the limelight during the official opening of Healing Way Hospital in Bogolobi, where Fortune Group Chairman Captain Mike Mukula saw a possibility of Uganda becoming a destination for medical tourism. If all goes as planned, Uganda will have 2 new legislations to guide the health sector. Now, the National Medical Insurance Bill and the Assisted Reproductive Technology Bill have been earmarked for debating and passing. And while the latter is at committee stage, having had its first reading, the former is not. The idea is to enable all couples and parents to bear children without breaking the law. These will be landmark additional legislation similar to those passed in 2022. Now, the Human Organ Donation and Transplant Bill and the Public Health Amendment Act were enacted to guide such operations, and the success of this will partly take having blood banks established across the country. When this is done, 25% of Ugandans seeking medical attention abroad will decrease. And that marks it for the local stories that we have today. But let's have a look at what is on the foreign scene.
On the foreign scene, for days, Donald Trump and his White House team had insisted they were fully committed to their decision to impose sweeping reciprocal tariffs on dozens of countries. They even derided a report on Tuesday that said the president was considering a 90-day pause, news that triggered a brief stock market surge. But now that pause on higher tariff rates with a few notable exceptions, is a reality. The reordering of the global economic order is on hold, and Trump's promise of a golden age of American manufacturing will have to wait. The White House has said that going big on tariffs and then hitting the pause button before entering negotiations with individual countries was the plan all along. We've had more than 75 countries contact us, and I imagine after today there will be more, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent told reporters shortly after the announcement. That framing from the White House is not surprising, of course, and it is difficult to ignore the investor panic, trembling bond market, and growing chorus of Republican criticism and public disapproval that preceded the announcement. So was it a strategic retreat in the face of unexpected resistance, or yet another example of Trump's art of the deal negotiating strategy at work? Now moving on, President Emmanuel Macron says France could recognize a Palestinian state in the coming months. Macron told France 5 television on Wednesday that he aimed to finalize the move at a United Nations conference on the Israel-Palestine conflict, which his country will co-chair with Saudi Arabia in June. Palestine's Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, Vassan Agbekian Shaheen, told the news agency AFP that France's recognition would be a step in the right direction, in line with safeguarding the rights of the Palestinian people and the two-state solution. Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Saar said any unilateral recognition of a Palestinian state would be a boost for Hamas. A unilateral recognition of a fictional Palestinian state by any country in the reality that we all know will be a prize for terror and a boost for Hamas, he wrote on X. Palestine has been recognized as a sovereign state by 146 out of 193 UN members so far, with Armenia, Slovenia, Ireland, Norway, Spain, the Bahamas, Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica and Barbados joining their ranks last year. And lastly, on April 8th, former Congolese President Joseph Kabila broke his silence after several years, announcing his imminent return to the Democratic Republic of Congo. In a statement released to RFI, Kabila explained that he's returning due to the country's out-of-control situation, citing worsening security issues and the collapse of national institutions. While no exact date was given, sources close to Kabila suggest he could arrive in the coming days through the eastern region, which he describes as critical danger. Kabila has been living in South Africa for a year, working on a thesis about Congo's relations with China. However, it seems that project is now on hold. Kabila's return also coincides with the political activities of his party, the PPRD, which recently rejected President Felix Tshisekedi's call for national unity talks. Well, with that, we come to the end of our national, local and international news. But now let's have a look at the newspapers from Uganda, Kenya and Tanzania.
And starting with Uganda, we are looking at the New Vision. Who is taking police officers' salaries? That is a question in the New Vision. Hundreds go for up to 6 months without pay. And in the New Vision, there a picture of President Museveni and Mama Janet Kataha Museveni and President Mnangagwa as Museveni tips African leaders on regional integration. But also in the New Vision, Uganda's international mathematics contest is back, and Katanga bullet projectile unfit for further comparison. But also in the New Vision, 200 tender opportunities in there, and the unanswered questions in death of honorary consul's baby. Now let's have a look at what is in the Daily Monitor. Homework puts parents to the test. Headache. Parents say they are facing numerous challenges, including lack of time and failing to solve some questions given to their children from schools as per homework. Very interesting there, yet a challenge and a reality. But still in the New Vision, in the Daily Monitor, you will pay the price, opposition tells colleagues over the 100 million shillings. And in business, how regional tensions have hurt Uganda's business ventures. But also the lizard there, now brains versus beauty debate will start in regards to the homework putting parents to the test. But looking at foreign matters in the Daily Monitor, US, China, Europe flex muscles over Trump tariffs. And post-mortem, here is what killed a Homoza at a city bar. And Daily Monitor Extra, while fatigue and driving do not mix. What is in Kenya and Tanzania, Olive?
Well, in Kenya, Ruto-linked farm wins back 13 billion shillings land. That is in the Daily Nation. But also, KDF-led team takes down 11-story condemned building. 11-story condemned building. We have a pictorial of that. And still in the Daily Nation, Governor Nasil, we are glad that the exercise ended without casualties. This is a moment of national significance, and we are grateful to our officers for executing it with just precision. That's regarding the takedown of the 11-story building. How Trump's new trade tariffs will hit Kenyans. That's also in the Daily Nation. Then dishonorable House member of Parliament gets 90-day ban from Parliament for fight with her colleague. And then in the Daily Nation day, a furious Moi minister resigned at Daily Nation office. Supreme verdict on killer women. Top court to make a ruling on the battered woman syndrome defense. That is in the Daily Nation. But now looking at the Citizen from Tanzania, officials, nothing unusual in maize bean price rises. And then MPM lists government success ahead of 2025 polls. Ewura to conduct study on electricity service delivery costs. And again, yet another promise on new BRT buses. Still in the Citizen, Zanzibar fuel prices up but are still lower than on the mainland. And in football, Simba SC reach CAF Cup semis in Dar nail biter. You'll find that and more details in the Citizen. Now we will be taking a short break, but Julie, in just a minute, homework.
Homework, I'm not so sure what your experience has been. I believe that's a story you'll one time tell us, and I'd really love to learn from you. Well, in regards to homework, but very interesting.
Very interesting indeed. Anyway, here is One Direction with Day of My Life.
Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda. It's Good Morning Uganda.
Well, it is Thursday. Good morning. Welcome to Good Morning Uganda. Now today, the reason why I'm smiling is that right before we came on air, someone took me back into time, reminding me of some of the shows that we used to enjoy, especially as young children. Now, on UBC, then UTV, that was our TV, that would come on at 6 p.m., I think, up to midnight. And then we would have to wait up until the next day. And we have been reminiscing on some of the shows we watched back in the day. I think Pingu was a blockbuster in many a home. I mean, who didn't enjoy Pingu? But then there was also Generations, there was Dangerous Women, there was Dr. Derek. I remember my big sisters enjoying this one, and many more. What are some of the shows that you enjoyed back in the day? Today is Throwback Thursday. You can see it from the music that we have been playing for you. There was Missing You by Casey, and Julie here just told me that good morning, Julie.
Yeah, good morning, Olive. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Good morning. Thank you so much for choosing to watch UBC TV. And yeah, I just told Olive that Missing You by Casey, it feels like I watched it as a throwback then. Now it's playing as a throwback, but it feels like growing up I watched it as a throwback in itself. Not so sure if it was really a throwback at the time I got to experience it.
Well, it depends on when you were growing up, because that song is a 2001 song. And yeah, around that time I was starting to learn music, to fall in love with music. They say that the music you enjoy at the ages of 12, 13, 14, 15, basically your teens, is the music that shapes the kind of music that you appreciate later on.
Interesting.
Because now looking back, that is still my music. Yes.
Interesting. But you did talk about Inspector Derek there that used to show on UTV, and it reminds me of my mother. She really, really loved it so much. But you also talked about cartoons. Wow, I loved cartoons. They really raised me. I remember watching Tom and Jerry on Cartoon Network. I remember watching Didi and Dexter. I remember watching Ghostbusters. I remember watching SpongeBob came a little later.
So you're the SpongeBob kids.
It came a little later, but I remember watching the Simpsons. Till date, I still follow up with the Simpsons. I remember the Flintstones. I remember Gem, Powerpuff Girls. Wow, there was a lot to watch. And then Power Rangers, Land of the Lost. Goodness, that was a child that I had.
Now, actually, for me, now when I look back, I grew up in a household where I was, for the most part, the young child. So because I had big sisters in the house, for the most part, I would watch.
This is Good Morning Uganda.
Pick of the day on UBC.
He expected me to die like within the first 2 years.
Out of the blue, the child will get pains, especially in the wrists. And this happens commonly when children are starting to walk.
Was brought to you by
I'll call you every day, yeah, yo, baby, don't know.
You can now get all the Chibuzi out with MTN voice bundles. Call all networks, Kubei Dondoro. Buy a 25-minute voice bundle for only 1,000, or buy any daily voice bundle of your choice. Dial *100 *21 hash and select daily, or use the My MTN app. When we talk together, we are unstoppable.
Juko.
Yo.
Check the shopping, man. What's your secret?
Uganda wange, haven't you heard of the parish development model PDM?
Yes, I did, but I thought it was just a talk.
No, Sebatia. It is real. I and a few friends together formed a circle, accessed money from the PDM, invested in a poultry project, and now things are moving.
Juko. I thought I was one of your friends.
You are.
But you left me behind.
I didn't leave you in poverty. But what you do, just visit your LC2 chairperson and your parish chief, and start the process of economic transformation. Just like that. The parish development model is an initiative from the government of Uganda through the Ministry of Local Government, designed to transform all lives of Ugandans for the better. PDM, my parish, my development, my life.
Good morning once again. It's Good Morning Uganda here, coming to you live from the broadcast house at Nile Avenue. Thank you so much for being a part of Good Morning Uganda. My name is Olive Monica Najuma. I am with Julie Nantaba Mosisi. Now, gender-based violence remains a critical issue in Uganda, affecting a significant portion of women and children, but also there are rising cases of gender-based violence among men. Now, initiatives like Sauti 116 have been pivotal in addressing and mitigating the challenges related to gender-based violence by providing essential support services. Now, today, we do look at some of the objectives of Sauti 116, but also how they have helped in mitigating and mitigating gender-based violence, and also providing solutions, providing help to those that are affected. Their main role is to look out for children, to help stop crimes against children, but also other people that are affected by gender-based violence. Now, when you look at the statistics, they indicate that the biggest portion of people that are affected by gender-based violence in Uganda are women and children, and a few cases of men. So join us for this conversation. We will be interested in your opinion. So join the conversation on WhatsApp number 0709 602592. How do we combat gender-based violence in Uganda? It will be important for you to share your experience or your views regarding the same. Now, Julie, gender-based violence, I remember yesterday when we were starting the show, I beckoned women to seek help. Sure. To not wait until it is too late. But then a concerned male colleague did ask, Olive, why don't you talk about
the men?
The men. And he had a viable question there, because there are cases of men that are also suffering gender-based violence. In as much as the numbers of the people that are mostly affected are women and children, and the people that are abusing them are men, we can still not ignore the other side. True. But first of all, let's look at Sauti 116 call center or helpline. Can you provide an overview of Sauti 116, its primary objectives in combating gender-based violence in the country?
Yes, that's right. So Sauti 116 is a call center, a facility that houses government helplines that was created to combat violence against women and children, as well as handling mental health cases. Now, in Africa, it's most organizations such as these are handled by NGOs, but in Uganda particularly, it's handled by the government, and it has so far handled, at least it registers about 1,500 cases daily, calls daily, receiving 1,500 calls daily of people who are facing different challenges: children, women, young men, young girls facing mental health challenges, but also has handled over 12,000 cases. And by 2014, the Ministry of Labor, Gender and Social Development put up this structure to answer the call to gender-based violence. And it has really come through, in the sense that it has provided and continues to do so, to be a platform for children, to be a platform for women, to be a platform for men as well. And it will surprise you that at least by 2023, more men had made calls than women. That on a ratio of 40% cases reported by 2023, and closed at that, more men had made calls to this facility more than the women. Very interesting and surprising, but it is what it is. Now, Sauti 116 also has empowered young voices. It has given a platform for young voices to have a place to run to have a place to call anytime there is an issue, anytime they feel unsupported within the primary spaces that they exist. And Sauti 116 also engages community education and sensitization campaigns, aligning hand in hand with district offices and district centers, just so to educate masses about gender-based violence, but also children's rights. So in a nutshell, that is what Sauti 116 is about, and it's located in Wakiso district in Chireka.
In Chireka,
Yeah.
just here. Now, Julie, when we look at some of the statistics, statistics do indicate, let's look at the prevalence of gender-based violence in the country. According to the Uganda Demographic and Health Survey 2016, approximately 56% of ever married women aged between the ages of 15 and 49 reported experiencing physical, sexual, or emotional violence from a current or former partner. Now, the forms of violence in the country, you would be looking at a report that shows that by the end of 2023, the gender-based violence sector working group managed 3,003 incidents, with psychosocial emotional abuse accounting for 33%, denial of resources at 25%, and physical assault at 22%. This was at the end of 2023. Now, when we look at historical influence, the Second World Conference on Human Rights in Vienna in 1993 and the Fourth World Conference on Women in 1994 prioritized addressing gender-based violence, highlighting its long-standing global concern. Now, what are the cultural perceptions when it comes to gender-based violence? Let's first look at that, and then we go back to Sauti.
Well, cultural perceptions, very interesting, because it starts with society. Society in nature is patriarchal. And for most people, the idea of a woman fronting is very blurry. For most people, society as it is, just by obvious nature, by default setting, society has it that there are certain spaces a woman cannot be. And that means that even when she pushes through to access these spaces, there is some form of opposition. But let me also flip the coin and not leave the male counterparts. By society, there are things men cannot do, just by society's default setting. And when men happen to find themselves in a particular situation of some sort that society perceives a man cannot be, by all means, they are judged. So this aligns with culture. This aligns with things such as, I'm not so sure if these things even still exist in urban settings, but at least I know for some rural settings that women cannot eat certain foods. You could find that in certain homes, let's take an example of chicken alone. There are women who don't eat the gizzard. It's just a thing, and you wonder why. So if in this day and age, 2025, there are people who still have such a mentality, which stems back in the African traditional society. That means culture still has a huge role to play. And when cases like
And who are the biggest perpetrators of violence when it comes to the cultural context?
Surprisingly, fellow women.
Help us understand
It is what it is. Because one, culture in a way hurts women. Yet it's normal.
So how are the
quotes,
women perpetrating?
You're
coming.
Yes.
Oja.
Yet it's women
Yes.
that are rather it hurts women. But essentially, the backdrop of it, the underlying effect, is that it is the standard. That rule can't be broken, even when they are hurting. So because women go through, from back in the day, they go through these systems where, for example, in areas where there's FGM, female genital mutilation,
Yes.
in areas where women cannot go past a certain level of education, in areas where women, there's a form of limitation whatsoever, because it has been the norm, and they've kept quiet anyways, because there were no systems to support them, because they did not have a voice, they did not act on it, they just complained about it from the inside and aligned anyways, because it is what it is. Now when they come to a generation of women who probably seem to be enlightened, who seem to be exposed, it comes off as unnatural.
It's more like a how dare you?
How dare you break the code?
How dare you question the fabric that we know?
Yes. Yet, essentially, even they know, as the older women, that they've been hurt by the system. But because it is the system, and when you oppose something that that is unusual, you're looked at in the first place as the enemy. So fellow women tend to impose those who oppose the systems. They tend to look at them a certain way, and essentially they want them to align just like they did, so that it's a continuous cycle.
So it's a crabs in a barrel kind of situation.
Yes, it's a continuous cycle. And one thing I know for sure, it's just part of being human. For as long as you're not healed, hurt people, hurt others. You would wish, in a way, even without stating it, you'd wish that if I went through it, why doesn't she? Who does she think she is? And unfortunately, most women do not realize it. Using an example still of FGM, many women still emphasize female genital mutilation because it's their culture. They have to preserve their culture. Yes, it hurt them, but how dare another woman
stop it, fight it?
Who is she? It is culture. We must preserve culture. Even with that ignorance of it's hurting your community, it's hurting your society, it's hurting the next generation of women who would actually be very, very pertinent to society, and it's killing their purpose. They do not realize it. Unfortunately, the ignorance in there plays a part. And it just kills a whole generation. Before you know it, it's spilling into generations and generations. So if you ask me, who are the biggest perpetrators of abuse when it comes to women, it's fellow women. We are helping the system.
We are helping the system. We are emboldening the system. And Julie, I like the example that you have used of FGM, because studies show that when these girls are forcefully taken into FGM, it's normally the older women in their society. Who does the cutting? It is still the women. It's not the men that are getting young girls and forcing them to be, mutilated. But then someone would argue that, for instance, in the Gishu community where they have Imbalu, some people are looking at as male genital mutilation, but then other people are saying it is not. So we still, I think in every sense, we have cases of opposers and those that are proposing and insisting that certain practices remain, because probably that's what they know and they believe that that's what makes them who they are. Because even here in Uganda, we have practices that a section of women and more evolved thinking people are saying, no, this is female genital mutilation.
Yes.
But then you're going to find a Muganda saying, what do you mean?
And in fact, girls are trained that if you do not do these things, you'll never get married.
Exactly.
So it's more of like being married, number one, is an achievement, which is society's way of painting it.
Women?
Not humbling women, but society paints it that being married is an achievement. Yet in itself, the reality is you do not count amongst your list of achievements in life that being married is one of them. Being married is just a purpose.
I think it depends on how you look at it.
So if you put it in line of achievement, that means whatever you do not fill your cup of as to what you're supposed to do on this planet Earth. You fill it as to what society is pushing you to do.
And you know what's funny? Men do not consider being married an achievement. They consider it as something that you do at a certain point in life.
Interesting.
But women
consider that too is wrong. It's not something that you do at a particular point in life.
Anyway, let's move away from that, Julie. Other reports do indicate that now this is a 2022 Uganda Democratic Health Survey. It shows that 44% of women and 39% of men aged 15 to 49 have experienced physical violence since the age of 15. In the 12 months preceding the survey, 23% of women and 14% of men reported experiencing physical violence. So what this report shows is that the cases of gender-based violence against men are also increasing.
Yes.
Then when we look at sexual violence, the survey indicates that 17% of women and 6% of men have ever experienced sexual violence. And intimate partner violence shows that approximately 54% of ever married women reported experiencing emotional, sexual, or physical violence from their current or most recent partner. So those are the numbers. But let's look at reporting, because this takes us back to the helpline and the call center, the Sauti 11 call. According to a report of 2023, Reporting and Justice, out of 14,681 domestic violence cases recorded, only 1,520 reached the courts, with 423 resulting in convictions. You see the stark difference. 14,681 cases recorded, only 1,520 went to court, and only 423 had convictions. So, Julie, do you think that because many cases do not reach courts, and that those that reach court, a few get convictions, do you think this is the reason why many cases of gender-based violence are not reported? Because when you talk about civil society organizations and players, they will tell you that many of the gender-based violence cases in our society go unreported. A father sexually abuses a child, and the family keeps it under wraps to maintain the family image. A woman beats her husband, the husband cannot report because he's going to look like a weak man. So do you think because of this, that's why people do not report?
Yes, highly. If anything, I think it's the biggest culprit. The fact that people keep quiet, it's the biggest culprit. And most times people are silent because of the fear of being judged. You fear being judged. Society's norms, the perimeters around what society will say, what society is perceiving your case. When it comes to the men, many men are being abused emotionally at that. But because it's rare, it's unheard of in society, you'll find that many men keep it to themselves in the sense of, I will be judged. In the sense of, I believe even I haven't experienced myself a police case of a man, reporting, but at least you've seen comments from society, from different people.
There is a case this week that has gone viral, though there are allegations that this case happened in 2021. A lady that was waving a knife and threatening to hurt the husband.
Yes, that ex-story.
Yes. But you see some women are defending and saying that you don't know what triggered her to reach that moment. And then there are men who are saying, this man is weak, why couldn't he beat her instead of
that's
just
where the problem
recording
is.
her?
That's where the problem is, because at no point should violence have an excuse. I've seen cases where someone is beaten, and whoever is listening to the story has the audacity to ask, they didn't do it out of no reason.
But Julie, are you saying there is no trigger?
There is
what
a
if
trigger.
It is self-defense?
Yes, there is that. There's self-defense. By the time someone does it back at you in self-defense, it's because they did it first, right? But so I'm referring to the initial case of when it starts. By the time someone beats you back, it's out of self-defense. But they don't beat you back just out of the blue.
Do you have to fight back, or what's better, to fight back or to walk away?
So most times in a situation of scuffle, you don't know what human instinct will come out of you. You can't predict it. You can't even control it sometimes. In that moment of high tension, anything happens in that moment. But many times I think I'm gobsmacked by people who, say for example, a woman has been beaten, and the first question she's asked is, there must have been a reason why he couldn't have beaten you out of. But there are chances that he could have killed me, whatsoever the reason. And allow me go back to the ancient books, at least for the Bible that I have got an opportunity to read. It states that women, in cases of same marriage or relations, that women are a weaker vessel. So men, even when you know that you're advantaged, obviously, you're advantaged with energy, you do not have to use it against.
What if she's waving a knife at you?
Against a woman, right? Walk away. The best thing is walk away. I think that's one of the things I always tell my male counterparts.
Yes.
There are women who are also, truly.
I feel like...
But most times for a man, the best thing is walk away. To save yourself, because the law by all means is not in your defense when it comes to cases like that. By the time you get justice, a lot will have taken place. The lot is not obviously on the side of men, unfortunately. The law,
it's like you're saying that it is men against women. Is that how the
Should
law
it?
is, or the law is actually for everyone?
the
It's
law
made-
is for everyone.
Yeah, but when you say-
when you read most of it,
Yeah.
it lies mostly on the side of the women. That
Why is
even
that?
a woman can use it for her own selfish gains. We've seen women who bring up cases of rape, even when it never happened.
Is it the law that is more aligned with women, or it is the court of public opinion? Because I've seen cases like, for instance, the Johnny Depp Amber Heard
Yes.
case where she said, who do you think they will believe?
One time,
So is it court of public opinion in the case of Uganda, or is it the law?
One time, I'll use this example. One time I was at a police station, and it was a case of domestic violence. And the OC at that police post outrightly said it. He said that a man, by the time you finish telling us your story, that you are innocent or not, the law will have listened to the woman first and a child. It's just how it is. This is an OC who made that statement.
Why do you think it is this way? Is it because time and again it's been proven that majority of those abused, because when we let's look at some of the numbers again, Julie, you look at sexual offences, and the 2023 annual Uganda annual police crime report recorded 14,826 sexual offences, representing 6.5% of overall crimes, and of these 13,144 were defilement cases, translating to approximately 36 girls below 18 years being defiled daily. So is it because we have a background of cases of this nature that it's very hard to believe it's the first time when a man says, I have been
yes, of course, examples along the way. Most times it's been men that have been the criminals. But also let's look at what really the law says. And it paints a picture, it helps paint a picture to see whether it's for the women, for the men, or for all citizens of Uganda. So the 1995 Constitution guarantees equality before the law and prohibits discrimination based on gender. So that ideally is for everyone. You do not.
So the law is for everyone.
Yes, ideally that states that the law is for everyone. You do not discriminate anyone
Because
based
of
their
gender.
gender, right?
Yes.
But also the law provides protection of women and their rights, including dignity, protection from exploitation, and rights in marriage. This law, that means, has a background story as to why it's protecting women, especially their rights in marriage, right?
Wow.
So the law is a potato. Another example is rape, defilement, assault, and domestic violence are crimes according to the penal code. So anyone can be assaulted, any child, male or female, can be defiled, anyone, male or female, can be raped. So now what are the facts in the case? By the time, I have a friend who's a lawyer who told me that by the time a man proves that he was raped. We all know the nature.
And the first response is usually, how can a man be raped?
Yes, but also let's say that that's not the first response. We all know the nature of our bodies, the biological nature of men, the biological nature of women. If a woman's biological nature in regards to that part of life, it's just a matter of, even when he's not willing to, but because it's how he is wired, there's no way he'll prove that he was raped. It's just impossible. By the time he proves his innocence, at what cost? How much will he have lost?
So what does I was going to say a normal man, but in your thinking, because of looking at all that, the biological makeup of a man, if they are faced with an issue of gender-based violence, let's say sexual violence, what would be the first reaction of majority of men?
Most men will keep quiet because the law won't immediately help.
How about the children, as we close, Julie? Because when we look at child marriage, the 2016 Uganda Demographic and Health Survey reported that 49% of women aged 20 to 24 were married before their 18th birthday and 12% before their 15th birthday. Your responses, our last remark.
Oh, that's heartbreaking. Very, very heartbreaking to see children get married because, I think the law now should have a specific for parents. It should be a non-negotiable for parents. You can't have your child get married. But also, allow me go back a little bit for men. I think we should one time, in fact, have an expert talk about, on behalf of the men, what advice should be given to the government to help men. But for children, parents are the first culprits to be handled by the law.
Well, thank you so much for being a part of the conversation. The conversation continues on our X account. The hashtag is UBCGMU. Stick around, the show continues.
In a nation hungry for truth, a world where every story matters, there exists a beacon of trust and reliability. For decades, they've been our voice and our window to the world, holding the mirror of our history. With 4 TV stations and 11 radio channels spanning 27 languages, they stand as guardians of information, defenders of truth. With Mascari Heritage Advantage, they uphold every citizen's right to reliable and free information. Their archived stories shaped our past and illuminate our present. Yet now, as new challenges arise and the world evolves, their mission faces its greatest test yet. Be part of our journey and let's navigate the unknown, uncover the untold, and safeguard our future together. Tune into your public broadcaster, for it is the intersection of trust and truth. Because to UBC, your story, and every voice matters. UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Juko.
Yo.
Check the shopping, man. What's your secret?
Uganda, haven't you heard of the parish development model PDM?
Yes, I did, but I thought it was just a talk.
No, Sebatia. It is real. I and a few friends together formed a circle, accessed money from the PDM, invested in a portrait project, and now things are moving.
Juko. I thought I was one of your friends.
You are.
But you left me behind.
I didn't leave you in poverty. What you do, just visit your LC2 chairperson and your parish chief and start the process of economic transformation. Just like that. The parish development model is an initiative from the government of Uganda through the Ministry of Local Government designed to transform all lives of Ugandans for the better. PDM, my parish, my development, my life.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda.
The temperatures are really crazy. Like you can see, it's a hot morning and we are still at Namugongo Shrine. And behind us is just the lake. It's called Uganda Matters Lake. I didn't know there's one of a kind like that. But also an appreciation to the Catholics. I think they've taken part in planting as many trees as they can. And when you get to this area, there's at least much shade regarding climate change. Now, bringing you back to what we've been discussing. The other day, we were talking about what was inside the shrine. You got to see what was in there, you got to learn one or two things, and when we also got outside, you still got to see what was there. And we promised to bring you to the lake, which is where we are standing right now. We are yet to know why is this lake in Namugongo Shrine, how did it come to existence, is it a man-made lake or not? Let's hear that from Ben. We are with him again, and he's going to be introducing to us himself and tell us more about this place. We are happy to have you again, Mr. Ben.
Thank you so much. Once again, my name is Ben Tenywa, in charge of visitors and pilgrims at the Uganda Matters Catholic Shrine in Namugongo. Now where we are, this is a man-made lake. We call it the Uganda Matters Lake. Before it was a swamp. The executioners, after executing people up there, they were sloping down here in the swamp to wash, to bathe, to cleanse themselves, refresh themselves. Tell the gospel, not responsible for your death. It is the king who told us to kill you, don't haunt us. It is the goddess of Uganda, you minimized and called them demons, responsible for your death, not us. So now, when they were designing the place, a priest who was here in charge, the late Monsignor Lawrence Mbwega, decided to dig the lake. This is a smaller lake which was dug basically for mass to be celebrated here whenever there is need for any open air mass, especially on Martyrs' Day. Martyrs' Day every year is a public holiday in Uganda. The bishops and the priests, they go in the basilica, in the shrine, they put on their vestments, they make a procession and go in the middle. In the middle of this lake, that pavilion is for bishops and a few priests. The excess of the priests, they sit behind, the pavilion behind. The pavilion this side is for president and all of government officials, all of VIPs in that pavilion. The pavilion that side is for the sisters, brothers, brothers and the sisters. Then the rest of the pilgrims all over. They put speakers on the trees so that people can hear them wherever they are. 3 popes have been here. The first pope to come in Africa celebrated the Mass here. Pope Paul VI was here on 2nd of August, 1969. John Paul II was here on 7th of Feb, 1993. And Pope Francis was here on 28th of November, 2015. Christians believe this is holy water. When they come here, some wash in their face, some touch, some carry at home. It depends on your faith. So here is a Pope sacristy. Pope Francis blessed from here, and he went for Mass there. So, thank you so much.
Meaning when he came, this was already put in place.
When Pope Francis was coming, they demolished whatever was here. There are some sheds which were here, but when the Pope Francis was coming, they demolished all those sheds and they put up these new ones. Yeah, each pavilion has got toilets and rooms underneath. Yes.
And maybe to shed a light on Uganda Matters, usually when it's happening, take us through what happens what happens in place.
Matters Day, 3rd of June, is a public holiday in Uganda. That's the day we remember the Uganda Matters. Every day they choose a diocese to lead us in the celebrations. Now this year, 2025, we have Lugazi diocese. On that, before that, we start with the prayers, a novena for 90 days. A novena is a prayer for 90 days with a particular intention. So we start with the prayers for 90 days. People walk on foot. People come walking from northern Uganda, western Uganda, eastern Uganda. People come walking from Nairobi on foot. Not because they don't have money, but to make a pilgrimage. So by 1st of June, the place is already full. Now on the very day, Mass, the procession starts from the basilica. The bishops and the priests, they go inside the basilica, they put on their vestments, they make a procession and they go in the middle there. So the Mass starts at 10 a.m. and it ends at midday. Then speeches by 2, everything is done. Yes.
And when it is done, everyone goes back.
Everyone goes back. Those who come walking, they use buses, they use their vehicles and they go back.
That's interesting. I didn't know that people are coming all the way even from Nairobi, walking. I thought it is Ugandans that are walking all the way, and probably the rest are catching flights and starting their walks from Entebbe. It's an interesting one for the faith. What are some of the things that these people be seeking for, especially to take that route of faith, to walk all the way? Now let's talk about people, for example, from Kisoro. From Kisoro you walk probably the other corner in Karamoja till here. What is it that they are yearning for that will make them take that step to get to this place?
people who walk, for them they're strengthening their faith. They say if the Uganda martyrs were burnt, if the Uganda martyrs were killed, they were like us. They were black like us, they were men, they were young, they were old. So they say, since the Uganda martyrs were burnt, and nobody is willing to burn us, nobody is going to burn us, let us go an extra mile of walking. So they make a pilgrimage, they make that holy journey. And in the process, they believe they are communicating with God, they are talking to God, they are coming nearer to God. And in the process of doing that, some are asking for forgiveness of their sins. Some are asking for the particular intention is they intend to receive from God. So it is a holy journey. It's a prayerful journey. People come praying. People come telling God, seeking for forgiveness. People come. Some come with particular intentions. This year in this pilgrimage, I'm asking for this. So doing that, let me walk. I'm asking for forgiveness of my sins. Doing that, let me walk. To achieve that, let me walk. So that's why you see people walking. Walking to be more nearer, to strengthen their faith, to be more nearer to God. Yeah, in this event, pilgrimage.
This is a place we've got to learn about for so many years. How have you been able to keep it this clean and intact in this area?
Yes. You see, this is a place of visitors. This is a place of pilgrims.
Yes.
So we have we have workers, workers who are always here to clean up this place. So on daily basis, visitors come. So for that matter, we have workers who clean the place. We have enough workers who clean this place to make it clean the way you have found it. Yes.
Okay, and when we look at the tourists that keep coming in, exception of the big day, the Uganda Martyrs Day, where the biggest numbers, I don't know, isn't it the day when the biggest numbers are? Yes, so let's look at now the other days. How often do you get in the visitors, and usually what are they looking for, the tourists?
Visitors come on daily basis. Every day we get visitors, we get pilgrims, we get tourists. There are those who come to pray. There are those who come to tour. Those who come to tour, they have heard of this place. They want to know, is it true that people were burnt because of their faith? So that alone attracts tourists. That alone attracts pilgrims. So on daily basis, we get people who come to tour, people who come for pilgrimage. Because what happened here is not common, that people were burnt. In Uganda, it is only here. In Africa, it's only here. Maybe, I don't know, in the whole world. But what happened here is unique, that people were burnt. So people come to see this holy place. And so many people want to associate themselves with the holy place. And this year, I must visit the holy place. And one of the holy places in Uganda is Namugongo. Yes.
And maybe to give us your closing remarks or something that you would like us to know about the Namugongo Shrine.
Namugongo Shrine is a shrine dedicated to the saints, the Uganda martyrs. Now I call upon you people of God to come and receive blessings, the Uganda martyrs. If you have you need a miracle, you need something to strengthen your faith, this is the place. You emulate the Uganda martyrs to attain sainthood, because the Uganda martyrs are now saints. We also can become saints. The only way is to learn about the Uganda martyrs, to meditate about the Uganda martyrs, to think about the Uganda martyrs, and visit the place like this one where the Uganda martyrs were killed.
Thank you for sticking with us on the GMU Tourism Express. And this morning again, it's been the Religious Tourism Week dedicated to Catholics.
Good morning once again. Welcome back from GMU Tourism Express. And that reminds me that this month of April, the Kampala City Council Authority arrests anyone who is caught walking through Kampala's green. So be careful. Do not get caught trespassing through Kampala's green. Otherwise, you will be arrested and charged in the courts of law or made to pay a fine. Good morning once again. My name is Julie Nantaba Musisi, and it's GMU Business looking at the budget plenary. The Minister of State for Internal Affairs, David Mohozi, considered an opinion by members of Parliament on empowering the judiciary to address case backlog than constructing more prisons. The MPs objected the proposal of allocating 18 billion to the Uganda Prison Service for accommodation and infrastructure to construct a mini maximum prison. The House, chaired by Deputy Speaker Thomas Tayebwa, deliberated on the report of the Committee on Defence and Internal Affairs on the ministerial policy statement for the next financial year 2025-2026. Now, issues relating to the challenges which the Uganda police forces go through dominated the mixed reactions of the MPs. Parliament resumed on Thursday afternoon to among others, progress with the budget cycle of the next financial year 2025-26. And Thomas Tayebwa, the Deputy Speaker, chaired the House, where the Parliamentary Committee on Defence and Internal Affairs presented its report on the scrutinized ministerial policy statements for the forthcoming financial year. The MPs expressed several reactions on the operations of the Uganda Police Force, including the slow response to various crime scenes. Although about 74% of police officers lack institutional accommodation, the committee noted that the development budget for the assistance of Uganda Police Project will close in financial year 2024-2025, yet 52.858 billion is allocated for the financial year 2025-26, and additionally the development budget has been further enhanced by 164 billion for institutional development to retool UPF. The report had provided for accommodation and infrastructure, allocating 18 billion for the construction of one mini-max prison. But Kasanda South MP Kabuye Frank interested the House to consider empowering the judiciary to address the case backlog than adding more prisons. The Minister of State for Internal Affairs, David Mohozi, was in agreement, and government noted that the prisoner population rises by 8% annually. The MP for Butambala County, Muwanga Chivumbi, described the proposed new project dubbed the 20 MW Nakasongola Solar PV Power Plant with a budget of 28.6 billion over 5 years from the next financial year as an elephant project. And the Minister Mohozi responded. Minister Mohozi, David Mohozi, shared with the MPs the progress of the stipulated fresh mass enrollment of the national identity cards, and the House by press time progressed with other reports of the parliamentary committees on the ministerial policy statements for the next financial year 2025-2026. Now let's move on looking at matters energy. The 2025 Energy Access Investment Forum discussion is prioritizing a need for increased funding for the energy sector and more public-private partnership. Now, the three-day event in Kampala, which attracted at least 600, is organized by the Alliance for Rural Electrification, co-hosted by the EU through its Global Gateway initiative supported by GET. Electricity powers almost every aspect of modern life, from powering appliances and lighting homes to enabling transportation, communication, and industrial processes. Now, the 10th edition of Energy Access Investment Forum is a top annual investment event for the renewable electrification sector, fostering business and investor partnerships for the purpose of sustainable electricity access, decarbonization, economic growth, and fighting against climate change. Top on the agenda of the discussions is galvanizing energies in attracting vast financing for the energy sector and build robust public-private sector partnerships that will enhance last-mile electricity penetration. Okasai Opolot, the Minister of State for Energy, says Uganda is focused on off-grid and on-grid extension. And IF 2025 is a European program that mobilizes investments in renewable energy. The forum in Kampala is being held under the patronage of Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development of Uganda. Now, looking at matters regarding cassava farmers are destined to reap big as the presidential initiative on banana industrial development seeks to incorporate cassava processing alongside banana, since they all contain similar component of starch. As government embarks on the construction of the industrial technology park in Chiruhura district, farmers have been urged to grow cassava on a large scale to widen their income base. Contrary to their earlier plans of constructing yet another banana processing factory in Sanga Town Council in Chiruhura district, government reallocated the construction of the same factory at Rebitete, just opposite the Engineering Development and Incubation Center in Nyakashasharaj sub-county. The land that government had secured in Sanga Town Council was later grabbed. However, Agric was again compelled by government to allocate 420 hectares, where the designs for the construction of this factory are currently being held. Speaking at the handover for site planning and designing to Technology Consults, Professor Florence Muranga, the Executive Director, Presidential Initiative on Banana Industrial Development, PIBID, now turned Banana Industrial Research and Development Center, BIRDC, said plans are underway to incorporate cassava processing alongside matoke. Muranga now encourages cassava farmers to plant the crop on a large scale. Unlike the Bushenyi Banana Processing Factory, the Industrial Technology Park in Chiruhura will, along with other technologies, tailor to support banana farmers to produce better yields. And the available of instant solar power attracted the construction of this factory in Chiruhura, which erases complaints by the banana farmers in Isinjiro district. Besides, the factory is centrally located on a highway which shall make the exports so cheap. And upon completion, the plant will create synergies among farmers on top of producing feeds for both animals and fish. Now let's look at the Forex rates as of 9th April 2025. And by yesterday opening, the US dollar was buying at 3,681.95 and selling at 3,691.95. By midday, it was buying at 3,691.32 and selling at 3,701.32. By midday, the pound was buying at 4,740.39 and selling at 4,753.23. And the euro was buying at 4,073.34 and selling at 4,084.40. The Kenyan shilling was at 28.43 and selling at 28.50. And the Tanzanian shilling was at 1.36 and selling at 1.37. And the South African rand was at 186.10 and selling at 186.61. Well, that brings us to the end of GMU Business, but Good Morning Uganda does continue. Olive is coming up next with the agenda, and Ruben will be coming as well with GMU Sports. So stay tuned.
In a nation hungry for truth, a world where every story matters, there exists a beacon of trust and reliability. For decades, they've been our voice and our window to the world, holding the mirror of our history. With 4 TV stations and 11 radio channels spanning 27 languages, they stand as guardians of information, defenders of truth. With Mascari Heritage Advantage, they uphold every citizen's right to reliable and free information. Their archive stories shaped our past and illuminate our present. Yet now, as new challenges arise and the world evolves, their mission faces its greatest test yet. Be part of our journey and let's navigate the unknown, uncover the untold, and safeguard our future together. Tune into your public broadcaster, for it is the intersection of trust and truth. Because to UBC, your story, and every voice matters. UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Juko.
Yo.
Wachikuwa. Check the shopping, man. What's your secret?
Uganda wange, haven't you heard of the parish development model PDM?
Yes, I did, but I thought it was just a talk.
No, Sebatia. It is real. I and a few friends together formed a circle, accessed money from the PDM, invested in a portrait project, and now things are moving.
Juko. I thought I was one of your friends.
You are.
But you left me behind.
I didn't leave you in poverty. What you do, just visit your LC2 chairperson and your parish chief and start the process of economic transformation. Just like that. The parish development model is an initiative from the government of Uganda through the Ministry of Local Government designed to transform all lives of Ugandans for the better. PDM, my parish, my development, my life.
Buza Commissioner, enhancing tax education and bringing it closer to the taxpayers. Many Ugandans have questions about the taxes they pay to URA.
When we come at revenue, they tell us to clear Chitenge at 10,000. And when we are selling Chitenge, we sell it at 17. So we don't know whether we are working or not.
Understanding your tax obligations can help you grow your business and avoid unnecessary losses. Now, you can get direct answers. Send your tax-related questions via WhatsApp or SMS to 0790-141-887 and the Commissioner General of URA, John Musinguzi, will personally address them. Tune in to UBC News Tonight every Monday and Wednesday for expert insights and clear explanations. Buza Commissioner.
Amaina ndina abiri Jennifer okuva mwero si ekigusa ekyaganibwa muterere town council we bwatuuka nga ndi kunika business kange kano nalinako nga amaani matono ino aye nawuliriza nkoze magezi ki ka business kange kano okweyongeramu abaye mulango ogwaida gwa gavumenti nti eriyo emyoga gyamba abantu kusitula mu buli muntu mbeera y'abataalimu najaayo kirungi nali leader nagira mu gurupu y'aba leaders nafunayo obusente naida nayongera mu ka business kange kano era nigano we mukaganiire nga nikano bwe kali kati tiyambisa bubi yambisa bulungi nga bwe muli kugibona sente dino adifuniyemu nga bwe ndi kubakobera danga siisaamu kuba business yange bwe yali kibweri yeyongeiremu sente dino dangasa kale nze basebo mbebaza ba programu ye mwatuleetamu nebaza nti kabiri banange we buli awo kyongero nga muli kumbona nkayenda bwende wale nali wansi aye kabiri butindizie kuku waigulu.
Well, thank you for sticking with us. It is Good Morning Uganda. Now we get into our agenda segment where we speak to policy makers and opinion leaders regarding different topics that concern Ugandans. Now the topic or the conversation regarding the HIV/AIDS response in the country is one that concerns pretty much everyone. Uganda has come a long way from having a prevalence rate of about 18% to where we are at 5.6, 5.4%. Yes, that indicates that we have come a long way. However, the fight against HIV and the drugs that we have been provided are mostly funded by donor money or with donor money. Now, with the United States of America cutting aid to many countries, Uganda inclusive, it begs for a question. Where are we and how do we go forward in the fight against HIV/AIDS? These are questions those living positively are asking, but also other Ugandans who could be at risk of contracting HIV. Now, we have a global agenda to end HIV, new HIV infections by 2030, and this is 2025. With the aid cut, is this a pipe dream or it is something that we can achieve? But also I've seen some allegations indicating that going forward sometime this year, Ugandans will have to pay for a certain amount of money to receive drugs for HIV/AIDS. Is this the truth or this is just allegations that are being made by people on social media? Now, to help us answer all these questions is Dr. Daniel Byamukama from the AIDS Commission, Uganda AIDS Commission, and he's the head of prevention over there, HIV prevention. So he will be answering these questions and also painting the picture for us. Where are we in the fight against HIV/AIDS? What do we do? Have we gotten alternative funds? What is the government planning for Ugandans that are living positively and those who are at risk of contracting HIV? My name is Olive Monica Najuma. Join the conversation on WhatsApp number 0709602592. Good morning, doctor, and you're welcome.
Thank you. Morning.
You're good?
I'm very well.
It's a cold morning.
It is, yeah, but it's well.
It is well. All right, doctor, the threat of the United States government funding to attaining the national goal of ending AIDS as a public health threat by 2030. When we look at the background, the conversations we have seen on, from the U.S. media houses, from the U.S. government, and then looking at where we are as a country, let's look at Uganda's commitment to ending HIV/AIDS as a public health threat by 2030. Is it still a reality or a distant dream? We have only 5 years to obtain this goal, Agenda 2030.
So thank you. Thank you very much. The Uganda dream of ending AIDS as a public health threat is still alive. You must recognize that treatment is a key part of that dream, ensuring that all our brothers and sisters who are already living with HIV are on lifelong treatment is inevitably part of the dream. And in spite of the US government withdrawing or their funding, some of their funding, we still believe we can realize that dream. Realizing the dream of ending AIDS as a public health threat encompasses several things. The first one is, of course, reducing the number of new HIV infections significantly. We may not bring them to zero, but something to be a threat, it means it's not an emergency anymore. It's not a crisis anymore. Currently, we have 38,000 HIV infections per year. But when we started counting in 2010, we are around 53,000. So that means we have already reduced the new HIV infections by up to 60% since 2010. We believe if we reduce them by 90%, by 2030, we shall have finished the threat. That's the AIDS is not that a threat anymore. If we reduce AIDS-related death by 90%, starting from when we started counting in 2010. We are currently at 20,000. In 2010, we had 53,000 AIDS-related deaths. So it's the other way. In 2010, we had 97,000 new HIV infections. We are at 38,000 now. In 2010, we had 53,000 AIDS-related deaths. We are at 20,000 now, which means for both death and new infections, we have reduced them by around 60% on our journey to 2030. So we have to work so hard to reduce death by another 30%, to reduce new HIV infections by another 30%. We believe we have the tools to achieve that. We believe we have learned lessons as a national HIV response to do it very well without wastage. Because wastage is part, but we have done the lessons, so we know what works, where it is needed. And we believe our government is committed to funding the response to attain this dream. Instead, in spite of the US government withdrawing some of its funding, we have been in conversation with the government, with cabinet, with the parliament. The commitment is clear. There will be no shortage of antiretroviral drugs. I heard you in introduction pointing to social media conversations that people will be scrambling for antiretroviral drugs. I can assure our audience that there will be no scrambling for antiretroviral drugs because antiretroviral drugs are quite expensive, out of reach of most of our brothers and sisters in this country. So, but we have had conversations with the head of state. He has come out boldly clear, Parliament has come out boldly clear that the resources shall be found, especially for HIV treatment, to make sure nobody really dies of AIDS. We don't go back to what we used to see in the 80s. And that commitment is clear. I'm sure our people will get the ARVs they need. But I must also take this opportunity to talk to the young people. Because young people had been boasting, it is written on social media, as you say, that young people do not fear HIV anymore. They fear pregnancy. They have been counting on antiretroviral drugs. But as you rightly say, most of antiretroviral drugs were being provided for by donors.
Yes.
The scare and the fear and the anxiety our people who are already living with HIV, the anxiety they have because of the threat of withdrawal of this funding is real. So I would want to caution young people, embrace prevention. You do not want to join the list of so many people who need antiretroviral drugs. They are expensive medication, and the government of Uganda cannot afford to put every Ugandan on HIV treatment. That is not possible. So we would want to emphasize those who are still lucky that they have not yet contracted HIV. Do whatever you can. We have so many tools that we can use. I hope I will have time to talk about the various tools we have.
We can look at the tools
that we have that will help you minimize or even eliminate your chances of contracting HIV.
Okay.
So of the tools, how are we going to get there? We have tools that are going to be dispensed in the health facilities. We call them biomedical. The first one I like talking about and defending, because it's quite controversial, is circumcision for men.
Yeah, there is conversation that, and from the medical sector as well, saying that it is not as effective as we were told.
Yes. The truth is circumcision is not a bulletproof. It's not 100% effective. And nobody ever said that circumcision was 100% effective. But circumcision is highly effective. I will give you statistics now. Of all the new HIV infections we had in this country last year, 8% of the new HIV infections were among young and unmarried men. So when we look at young and unmarried men who contracted HIV, and we compare those who were circumcised and those who were not circumcised, we find that almost more than 95% of the young men who contracted HIV were the uncircumcised boys and men.
Okay.
The circumcised were few. Out of the 8%, like 7.5 was contributed by the uncircumcised boy. 0.5% was by the circumcised boy. So don't you think circumcision is quite protective? You must recall that young people, in fact adults, when it comes to making a decision on whether to take the risk, engage in that sexual activity. As you well know, most of the HIV transmission in this country is through sexual relationships with people whose HIV status we don't know, or people who are living with HIV. When it comes to that time, whether to go and do not take this chance, because you don't know the HIV status of your partner, you don't have protection, you don't have condoms, many men will take that chance. Many men make the mistake. So, if many men are going to make the mistake, why don't you arm yourself with 60% and you increase your chances of getting away by 60%? So I would want to call upon all men who are not yet circumcised, go uncircumcised. I know you have various reasons to shun circumcision, including religion, but as I have already said, there are so many circumcised reverends. And if you want to hear from them, next time you invite me, I will come with some to testify that we are a group of circumcised reverends. So I would want men to get circumcised. The second one is antiretroviral treatment. It's one of the most effective tools. So the few brothers and sisters that have HIV, if we were to support them to take their medication well, it's one of the most effective tools of preventing HIV transmission. Because if they are taking very well, they attain a status we call virus suppression, they don't transmit. So what does an individual who is committed to contributing to the national goal of ending HIV have to do? Make sure you don't shame the person you think or know has HIV. Support them in any way. Buy them the water to swallow their medicine with. Create a supportive environment so that they take their medication well. When they are taking their medication well, there are very few viruses being spread within the community that will end up with you. We have tools. Unfortunately, some of these tools were being supported purely by the US government. Tools like what we call pre-exposure prophylaxis.
Yes.
But we are right now as a country in the process of developing a national HIV/AIDS strategic plan, a new national strategic plan, where we shall take on this responsibility to government and make a case to the parliamentarians to show them that pre-exposure prophylaxis is a medication we give to people who live a highly risky life.
Yes.
To make sure, in spite of their risk, they do not contract HIV. I know many of our leaders would call that promoting promiscuity. But I want to address that too. It is not promoting promiscuity. There are so many people within our population who are helpless about who are not in control. Circumstances surrounding them disempower them. They are not in control of their sexuality, of their sexual behavior.
What are some of these people? Who are some of these people?
There are so many people who live in abusive households. House girl has no job, the best job she can find is a house girl.
Yes.
But she has a boss who abuses them. If this house girl sneaked and came to a health facility and told us what happens to her, we would help her.
Okay.
You would ask, why doesn't she go? Where does she go? Where else would she go?
This is her job.
That is the only job she can find. At home, she has a heart, which she shares with her mother and father who are always fighting. She can't go back there. This is the only place she can find security. There are so many people called sex workers. And they have so many customers, surprisingly.
And the customers
sex
are people's
workers,
husbands and sons.
You may think, because as I always tell people, there's no child who grows up saying, when I grow up, I'll become a sex worker. It is circumstance conniving to disempower this girl to engage in a trade that is highly risky. And she's hooked, she's helpless. She can't get out of it. If she got out of it, her children will have nothing to eat. Every day she must go back so that her children can eat. Such a person is helpless. We must give them this pre-exposure prophylaxis because they have customers. Some of the customers are people in offices with regular jobs. If we don't save the sex worker, she will transmit HIV to very important people. You remember Bud Brack here once said that should I name names of my potential customers?
And some of them are persons
And
of great note.
people
in
were
the country.
anxious.
Yeah.
She just said, I have forgiven you. So she will, the sex worker will transmit HIV to the people. So I would want to convince our leaders that we need to consider supporting pre-exposure prophylaxis. What you have always argued is promoting promiscuity. It is not true. Of course, we have our traditional tools. Abstinence. I look at you young people. The young people of this generation almost argued themselves to disband, giving up on abstinence. But abstinence is real and practical, and it will save you. Being faithful to one HIV negative sexual partner is still real and practical. Condoms. Some of the support that was withheld by the US government was for buying condoms. Condoms are a backbone of our HIV prevention program since the 90s. At one time, it was one of the most effective tools we had. But we noticed that the population had given up on condoms because of treatment. But it is time for us to go back to condoms. Who taught the population how to use the condoms? It were the political leaders. I remember people like Honorable Matembe coming with a banana and a condom, moving village to village, community to community, demonstrating and teaching people how to use the condom. The political leaders were key. We still believe if we are going to end AIDS as a public health threat, in spite of the cut in US government aid, the political leaders must come and fill the gap.
Now, I saw a headline somewhere that indicated that government was to release a given amount of money to the judiciary to teach their workers condom usage. And many people on social media did make fun of that initiative, saying it is a wastage of taxpayers' money. What would you say about that?
Good question, thank you. I also came across that article, and I think it was, that comment was made out of lack of information. In this country, as part of our strategy to raise resources for our commitment to end AIDS as a public health threat, we implement what we call HIV mainstreaming. It means at every workplace, even at this place, even in the ministry, you have opportunities to take care of your people, to address their risk. People in the workplaces have risks. People who come here bring you risk. People you work with here bring you risk. So because we are aware, being in this workplace creates risk. The lawyers and judges, when they meet, they risk to each other. Us who come to use their services, we are a risk to them. So they must know how to prevent themselves from acquiring HIV. They must know the essentials of staying healthy if they're HIV positive. So we create a vote we call HIV mainstreaming, that each sector of government must put aside money to make sure it is taking care of the prevention needs of its people. I have had a conversation with so many young people in the banks here. They are so closed out, they are busy in their offices, that they are ignorant about HIV prevention.
Yes.
So the workplaces have a duty to give that information, to arrange for their people not to be left behind. So what the judiciary was doing is to make sure they meet the prevention needs of their people, educating them, buying the prevention tools they need, so that they are not put at risk because of their work.
Okay.
You will be surprised that every morning the condom dispensers in the washrooms of the judiciary are filled, and by the end of the day, those condoms are not there. Where are they going? They are being used by their staff, but even by people who use their services. And to us, that is making sure there's no missed opportunity there of preventing the next HIV transmission.
Okay, now you did mention that condom use has been one of the pivotal strategies that has been used to combat the spread of HIV/AIDS. And I remember growing up, I used to see there was this famous ad of a gentleman who went to the shop to buy condoms, but he kept asking for a packet of biscuits, and another packet of biscuits and another packet of biscuits. And what that showed us, because another gentleman came in and said 2 packets of condoms, please. And what this ad was trying to communicate was that you don't have to be afraid to buy condoms from any health center, from a supermarket, from a shop. Do people still have this fear of being seen purchasing condoms that are for their own protection?
Thank you. That's a very good observation. Right now, long ago in the 1980s, before some of you were born, even religious leaders, in the early 1990s, even religious leaders would participate in talking about condom. Because there was a crisis at that time. As we made HIV treatment available, and everybody looks healthy now, they have coiled back to using stigmatizing language against the condom. I would tell you that most of the adults here who are alive without HIV were saved by this condom. But now they have gone back to stigmatizing the condom. Right now, a young person purchasing a condom from the pharmacy is a real dilemma. But one of the call to actions we must make is that if we are going to end AIDS as a public health threat, now that funding by our partners has been reduced, we must go back to our indigenous, the tools that were created here, the ABC strategy, promoting a condom worked for us. We were able to reduce the HIV prevalence from as high as 18% to as low as 6.5% by the time we got antiretroviral drugs. Since we got antiretroviral drugs, we have reduced the prevalence from 6.5% to 5.1%.
Okay.
So we must go back to our tools. One of our tools was to promote condom use. That means removing the stigma towards the condom. The condom is a very effective tool. Number one, it prevents pregnancy and a desired and a plan for pregnancy. Right now in this country we have a crisis that 24% of all teenagers, by the time they get to 18, they will have become mothers. That's a crisis. I don't think there's any teenager who would want to become a mother.
No.
They would not access a condom because it is shameful commodity. It is being used as a wrong example in churches by key religious leaders. So we would want to call upon religious leaders and key political leaders. Number one, to put some money buying the condom, because the US government has withdrawn funding for the condom. But a condom, it saves us from unwanted pregnancy. It saves us from sexually transmitted infections. There are some sexually transmitted infections that you will contract and never recover from.
Like herpes.
Yes, it saves us from HIV. The cost of buying condoms for our population is much less compared to the cost of putting a few individuals on treatment for the rest of their life. So my call to action is that religious leaders, political leaders, or influential people in the community, let us desist from the habit of shaming the condom, of stigmatizing the condom. The condom remains a key tool that will help us attain our goal of ending AIDS as a public health threat by 2030, in spite of the cuts in funding by our donors.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Daniel. Now, please join the conversation. I am speaking to Dr. Daniel Byamukama, who is the head of prevention at the Uganda AIDS Commission, and we are looking at ending HIV/AIDS infections by 2030, or ending the threat of HIV as a public health threat by 2030. So share your views or your questions on WhatsApp number 0709 602 592. Now, Doctor, despite progress in expanding access to antiretroviral therapy, that is the ARTs, and prevention programs, challenges, like you mentioned, such as funding cuts and stockouts of essential HIV commodities, threaten to derail this goal. So what is Uganda AIDS Commission doing to ensure these challenges do not stand in our way to ending HIV as a public health threat in Uganda?
Yeah, thank you. Because, as I said earlier, the HIV treatment program is a key pillar of our HIV response. Even though the US government, who has been our main donor for the HIV response has withheld some of the funding. They have not withheld funding for HIV treatment programs. And for that, we thank them. Of course, I've had conversations from Pan-Africanists who are saying, let the donors go away. They have been sabotaging us. I think those conversations are ill-informed. Because how did the US government come here? How did PEPFAR come here to support us with the HIV treatment program? It is because, if you look at the history, the first people to get antiretroviral drugs in Uganda were getting gift drugs. Drugs of people who have died in the US or in the developed countries were packed. There was somebody in these developed countries compiling drugs which had been returned by people who did not finish their drugs or those who have died, combining, collecting them and sending them to Uganda. That is our story. So many activists would go to US Congress, to the United Nations, to protest. Women would address to protest for this support to come here. So it is not true that the US government came here for imperialist missions in bringing antiretroviral drugs. There was activism. There was cry for help among Ugandans and other activists from across the globe. So we thank God that they came. So this is to address the discussion. I have seen the discussion, so many people were finally free. I don't know free from what. We invited them. Our people, our brothers and sisters who were in pain invited them. So since 2003, with support from the US government, we have been able to scale up our antiretroviral drugs to make them within reach of everybody who needs them. But unfortunately, not everybody has accessed this HIV treatment. Less than 85% of all people living with HIV have accessed this treatment. There are so many barriers that still stand in the way of so many of our brothers and sisters with HIV, in spite of bringing the drugs within reach. At Health Center 3, near their home, there are still barriers related to stigma, being shamed by your own family, being regarded as a lesser person because you're HIV positive.
Yes.
As a consequence, so many people are fearing to test, and so many people, even if they know that they're HIV positive, are fearing to come for the drugs, and they end up dying. As I told you, 20,000 died of AIDS last year. So, in spite of scaling up the drugs, we have seen the results. So many people are healthy, so many people are well. So even though the US government is threatening to withhold funding, they gave themselves 90 days to give us a final position.
Are the 90 days still ongoing?
We are counting in less than 2 weeks. Invite me back here.
Yeah.
I will give you the final update on where they have decided to firm their feet, whether they are withdrawing the funding. But as I said earlier, our conversations with the head of state, with the key policy makers, including members of parliament and the cabinet members, the leaders are committed to making sure there shall be no gap for antiretroviral drugs.
Okay.
Because as we know, antiretroviral drugs keep our brothers and sisters healthy and alive.
Yes.
They save us from creating more orphans. But it is important that they are on treatment because that means they will not transmit HIV to other people. So that the problem of people we have to buy drugs next year is not more than it is today. It is important that the government invests in making sure everybody who needs treatment gets it. And so far, we have that commitment, whether after the 90 days, which is the next 2 weeks, President Trump decides to withdraw everything, or whether he decides to retain something, for which me I would appreciate.
Yes.
The government is committed to fill this gap.
Okay, the government is committed to fill this gap. And for me, my takeaway from this conversation is that Ugandans are not going to be made to pay any amount of money to receive antiretroviral drugs, as it has been alleged by different people, especially on social media. I am speaking to Dr. Daniel Byamukama, who is the head of HIV prevention at the Uganda AIDS Commission. So we are getting this from the horse's mouth. Doctor, our time is fast spent, so I would like to hear your parting remarks to Ugandans out there watching and listening to you going forward.
So, the Ugandans listening is that in the country we have the tools to end AIDS as a public health threat. so that it's not a threat, so that it comes to a time where contracting HIV is less likely, or your brother or sister dying from AIDS is less likely. But each one of us has a part to play. And that part, which you had neglected and counted on somebody else to pay and give everybody drugs, that part has become more prominent now with the reduction in funding. We are calling upon you, go back to embracing the basics, go back to abstinence. Parents, teach your children abstinence. There is still time. Go back to the basics of being faithful to your negative sexual partner. If you cannot, at least reduce the number of possible sexual partners that you can take a risk within a year. That itself is protective.
Okay.
So, if you cannot, then we can go to condoms. But most important, make sure you support our people living with HIV. Take their medication very well so that there is no further transmission of HIV.
Well, thank you so much, Doctor. Now, this answer with a yes or no, Robert asks, he says he's 46. Can he go for circumcision? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, Robert, you had it. You can go and get circumcised. And everyone else that is interested, the doctor says age does not stop you from being circumcised if you're interested. Well, thank you so much for being a part of the conversation. We'll have Dr. Daniel here again to help us understand what the US will have come to, the final decision that they will have made. And he said in 2 weeks we will know. So we'll have the conversation again then. But for now, I'll take a short break. Ruben Pima is coming up next with Good Morning Uganda sports updates, and he will be speaking to a team of people that are young swimmers representing the country. So stick around.
Buza Kamiso now, enhancing tax education and bringing it closer to the taxpayers. Many Ugandans have questions about the taxes they pay to URA.